I can second that.
Second by Jeff. Any discussion about today's agenda? Hearing none, those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. Agenda is approved. Moving on to item 2 with communication and public comment. The board has a significant interest in maintaining the decorum of its meetings, and it is expected that members of the public and the board will address each other with civility. The orderly process of the board meeting will not be interfered with or disrupted by public comment. Only individuals recognized by the board president will be allowed to speak. Comments by others are out of order. If disruptive, the individual causing the disruption may be asked to leave the board meeting. Abusive, disruptive, or defamatory comments will not be permitted. The state board's agenda is full, and I will place a maximum of 30 minutes for public comment. I'll give each speaker 5 minutes or 3 minutes if there are a large number of speakers. At the end of your allotted time, I'll ask you to conclude, and the board will move on to the next speaker. The department will not respond to public comment aside from requesting clarification. The department may place a topic raised in public comment on a future agenda. Topic from public comment that is not related to an item on today's agenda will not be addressed at today's meeting. And we have several speakers that are with us. Cynthia Knight, you're up first. Welcome.
Hello and good morning. I'm Dr. Cynthia Knight with Choice Charter School, and I'm here to speak to you today to ensure that you have complete and accurate and up-to-date information regarding our charter renewal and to correct public record. Despite our several requests to be formally placed on today's agenda, we didn't receive response in that request, which is why I'm here providing it during the public comment section. First, I want to provide you with a folder, and each of you can have a folder. In that folder, you will find our April 22 contract, because I think Mr. Robbins is the only one who was on that board when we signed the contract, and I think it's a very good point of reference for you, and we'll provide some critical information. It's a foundational document for our renewal process. Secondly, I want to address that we, Choice Charter School, perceive as several inaccuracies presented to the by the Department of Education in their report on June 17th. And Choice Charter School was neither placed on the agenda nor permitted to defend itself at that meeting. And it resulted in the board approving the heavily reliant on outdated information and some false claims. The folder before you contains the current data required to make an informed decision on the renewal process. There's several inaccuracies, as you will see in the folder on the left-hand side. The two most serious that Choice Charter School views. First is the factually incorrect claims regarding our financial audit, alleging they were late, not submitted to the state auditor, and that our FY 24 and 25 were conducted simultaneously. This is false, and we provided the Department of Education with email documents proving the on-time submissions of all of our audits before they presented their report to you. The state auditor has confirmed they received all our reports as scheduled, and the reports were simply not posted on the website because we're a nonprofit. The department failed to verify this basic fact and introducing unwarranted doubt regarding our financial compliance. Secondly, the DE claimed that we met none of our contractual goals. And that's a false narrative that was repeated by a board member and Barbara Oland. If you reference the goal page, which is on the left-hand side of our signed contract in your folder, you will see that we have documented proof that we have successfully met 8 of those goals. As you recall, I informed the board during the public comment that the DE report was fundamentally flawed and respectfully asked you to not approve it. The board chose to approve it anyway, with their only concern in approving the report being a purported failure of Choice Charter School and not the inaccuracies or flaws in the actual report itself. Because of this reliance on unverified and demonstrably false claims, Choice Charter School has lost confidence in this board's current decision-making process. Therefore, we are formally and respectfully requesting that as soon as the process is put into place, that the University of Northern Iowa serve as the renewing body for our renewal process moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Next speaker is Julie Correa.
Correct.
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm with Choice Charter Schools as well, and I just wanted to come. I'm on the board, and I just wanted to remind everybody of the importance of the school. We serve 258 students, at-risk students that might otherwise not stay in an academic setting. So it truly plays a very good place in our community, and I just wanted to speak that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have Paul Carroll.
Paul, from Muscatine and been in and out of public education and worked with a lot of high-risk, at-risk students and really understand the dynamics of the challenges that students have. And you're charged with a very hard job of providing broad education to every single student in Iowa. And they're not all the same. And what Dr. Knight and I really reviewed what she put together, and she really thoughtfully and analyzed every single barrier that kids were missing, even in her charter school that was bricks and mortar here in town. And it's just common sense. If you're not meeting all those barriers and managing them, you're not going to do it. And this is the first systematic thing that I've ever seen that really reaches out to those individual kids and meets those barriers. She figured out how to work with the local schools, and that's important, and share the money. She's done great individual serving individual students, and one I got to work with a little bit, and I'm not directly involved in the education process, but I got to work with it. So there's something for everybody. The kid I worked with had serious health problems and just wasn't getting to school in his freshman year, but he really wanted to go back to MHS, Muscatine High School. He wanted to play soccer. So all he did was course recovery. Well, the school should have been able to reach out and do that, but they just, you know how public education is funded. There's kids that fall through the crack. And so he went back and played soccer and graduated. I just think there's so many barriers, and she's really thoughtfully figured out why aren't these kids working? And she's figured out how to make more of them work. And I think she has a success formula that just needs to be continued and broadened. And so I'm really high on what she's doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We have other public comment today. Anybody that's online?
If you wish to address the board, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in, please press *9 to raise your hand. There appears to be no public comment.
All right, we will close public comments and move on to the director's report. Director Snow.
Thank you, President Robbins and members of the board, again, for your impactful service. To start, we have a celebration. We are proud to once again lead the nation in both state and federal approval of Workforce Pell. Workforce Pell, as you may know, empowers students with low-income backgrounds to pursue and complete short-term in-demand post-secondary programs through federal grants. It really represents a sea change in supporting outcomes-driven coordinated post-secondary education and workforce systems that advance economic mobility for Iowans and for learners across the nation. Iowa Central Community College's EMT program has now been recognized as the nation's very first federally approved workforce Pell program. And last week on August 4th, President Ulrich of Iowa Central hosted U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon and acting U.S. Secretary of Labor Keith Sonderling alongside Governor Reynolds, Director Townsend, and myself for this historic announcement. And with the nation's first workforce Pell program, Iowa continues to champion those post-secondary education programs that have the best completion outcomes, the best employment outcomes, and the best earnings outcomes. And we're working to ensure that all students get a strong ROI or return on their investment, and employers have the skilled talent pipelines that they need here in Iowa. Leading up to the announcement, of course, was a lot of work. We were proud to launch our First in the Nation application on April 1st. We really wanted to ensure that institutions and programs had plenty of time to develop high quality applications, and we wanted to be able to provide intensive technical assistance and support as they did so. And of course, the bottom line is that students can benefit from Workforce Pell now. So we were going to ensure that our students had Workforce Pell support for these in-demand, highly accountable training programs as soon as it became available, which was on July 1st. For context, Workforce Pell is projected to provide individual eligible state residents with an estimated 1,200 to 4,500 annually in Workforce Pell grants for these, again, short-term in-demand job training programs that are aligned to H3, high skill, high wage, high demand jobs. And now 4 institutions, obviously including Iowa Central, but also DMACC, Eastern Iowa, and Iowa Western, seeking to offer an additional 8 state certified programs are in various stages of their application process to the U.S. Department of Education. There's a state application process that includes the review of the State Workforce Development Board and ultimately the governor's approval, and then a subsequent federal application process. So I'm going to ask you to please join me in congratulating Iowa Central and also thanking our dedicated team here at the department for their national leadership and implementation, especially Division Administrator Amy Giske and Bureau Chief Ryan Sante.
A sitting ovation for you.
I didn't even know you were there. So we also want to celebrate our therapeutic classroom grantees. So last month we were able to award about 2.3 million in competitive grants to 10 different school districts to establish or expand therapeutic classrooms that support vibrant, safe, and healthy learning environments that best meet the students' individual cognitive and behavioral needs. These awards start now, so they begin with the 26-27 school year and represent the 6th year of grant funding in this program. As a reminder, it was established through state legislation back in 2020, and it's a part of our statewide efforts to support the mental health needs of children, youth, and families in school. And of course, we commend this year's awardees and their partners for their leadership and their commitment to ensuring that they're realizing best practices in skill building, coping, treatment, crisis prevention, and intervention in the communities that they respectively serve. And then last month, Governor Reynolds and the department were able to announce $2 million in competitive grants to Ellsworth Community College and Iowa Western Community College through CAF, the state's Career Academy Incentive Fund. Those funds will be used to establish 2 new regional centers that support students across Iowa in accessing multiple pathways to post-secondary success. These are in-demand, resource-intensive programs that seek to connect our education and industry leaders in creating opportunities and pipelines to, again, H3 careers, high wage, high skill, high demand careers here in Iowa. The 2 new regional centers will serve students from 11 school districts together and 2 non-public schools. Ellsworth's career academies will focus on construction technology, ag science, welding, and entrepreneurship. And then Iowa Western career academies will focus on welding, construction management, plumbing technology, HVAC maintenance, electronics and industrial systems, diesel maintenance, and automotive maintenance. And then the department was recently awarded from the Volunteer Iowa Commission nearly $500,000 in competitive AmeriCorps funding to support about 80 AmeriCorps members that serve as student leaders and post-secondary success coaches, directly supporting students exploring post-secondary education and training opportunities. Since 2017, we have had summer leaders and summer transition associates provide over 13,500 instances of in-person and virtual assistance to students who are completing applications to institutions or for financial aid. And then finally, just this month, the department recognized 74 schools for their outstanding commitment to student completion of the FAFSA during the 25-26 school year. So looking back, the FAFSA-focused School of Achievement Award was provided to 46 high schools, and then 28 schools received the FAFSA-focused School of Excellence Award. Don Bosco High School in Gilbertville topped all Iowa schools with a 96% completion rate. And as of August 5th, we have 55.5% of all Iowa high school seniors having completed the FAFSA this year, which is 3% higher than last year. So overall statewide success as well. Then jumping into the Division of Pre-K through 12 Learning, this is our longest update in this section. But briefly, we wanted to make sure that the board knew that the department's investment in our evidence-based personalized reading tutoring assistant statewide has been announced to be continued for the next 3 years at no cost to Iowa schools. This was complementary to the Literacy Changes Lives Act back in 2024 that required those personalized reading plans. And this is an evidence-based intervention that can be integrated into those personalized reading plans. So it provides statewide access to all Tier 2, Tier 3, and English learner students, and up to an additional 110,000, very different number, 110,000 elementary students statewide. Also, just a couple quick updates on conferences. We recently held that 3-day professional learning opportunity, Every Learner Forward, with over 300 teachers, instructional coaches, and building and district leaders present each day. Those PD topics ranged from specially designed instruction or SDI, supporting students who are experiencing challenging behaviors, evidence-based classroom management strategies, to differentiating instruction for students who are English learners. We also have on our social media a number of video clips of participants sharing the impact on their practice that have received a combined nearly 10,000 views. And then just Tuesday of this week, we had the Governor's STEM Advisory Council convene to review year-end program outcomes and identify opportunities to deepen partnerships between STEM education and industry. Last month, we also hosted the STEM Teacher Externship Forum that brought together our teacher externs and business partners. As a reminder, this summer we had 95 externs with 78 unique workplace hosts for these 6-week-long experiences that create and enhance career-connected learning. So career exploration to work-based learning to industry-recognized credential attainment. And then just yesterday, we had our Science Leadership Summit at Iowa State in their Digital Ag Innovation Lab. This summit was really focused on assessing student achievement in science. And please recall that our science proficiency last year was up in all tested grade levels. So up 4 percentage points in grade 5, up 5 percentage points in grade 8, and 7 percentage points in grade 10. And then lastly, within conferences, our Bureau of ESEA programs, along with 5 other Midwest SEAs or state educational agencies, hosted our 21st Century Community Learning Center grantees in a technical assistance convening at the very end of July. And that was focused on academic alignment, so ensuring that our out-of-school programming is coordinated with classroom instruction. We have an exciting professional learning announcement. We are expanding our high quality instructional material academy statewide. So all Iowa schools can now sign up to join the next cohort of the HQIM Implementation Leadership Academy. It's intensive, it's 2 years, and it's an experience that supports our school district leadership teams and educator teams in implementing HQIM with integrity. Those applications are going to be accepted through the end of this month, so August 31st. And we will provide priority consideration to our identified schools under ESEA or ESSA. So our CSI are comprehensive support and improvement schools, and our TSI are targeted support and improvement schools. We've got space for 40 teams in both literacy and math. You can choose to pursue literacy only, math only, or both together, reviewing what is the best alignment for the HQIM implementation efforts of a respective school and school district. Then we have also extended our registration for a new math professional learning, again, in support of the implementation of HQIM with Fidelity. Please recall that based on our HQIM survey, illustrative math or IM is the most prominent math HQIM statewide. It's over a third of all Iowa schools reporting across all grade bands. So we have now invested in HQIM specific implementation professional learning at no cost to schools or districts. Each session is going to be hosted in one of 3 locations. We've got a West, a Central, and an East location. And then it tracks with K-5, 6-12, and then administrators and coaches. And then we are extending, of course, our math flexibility formula, evidence-based professional learning that's focused on early numeracy. That's about 10 hours of content. The grade bands are PK through 12, 3 through 6, and then there's a coaches edition. In addition to continued investment in statewide letters professional learning, we are also going to have a statewide virtual literacy professional learning convening on September 18th. Of course, board members are always welcome. It's going to feature our 2026 Teacher of the Year, Stephanie Pritz, who got to meet at our last meeting, as well as our partners at the Iowa Reading Research Center. The sessions are going to be focused on HQIM implementation, as well as evidence-based practices for English learners, research-based approaches to morphology, and then helping caregivers and educators support the development of code-focused literacy skills. Again, no cost to participants. And then finally, we have a number of early childhood professional learning opportunities forthcoming, focused on assessment and data-informed decision-making, curriculum and instruction, program and learning standards, and then specialized early childhood topics. Within grant opportunities, our 26-27 community-based provider for statewide voluntary preschool program is open through August 21st. This was established as a new opportunity for eligible community-based providers to apply directly to the department to participate in statewide voluntary preschool program through House File 2754. And then beginning this coming school year, approved providers may operate an independent preschool program while meeting state requirements for high quality preschool programming, accountability, and reporting. Our Computer Science Incentive Fund grants are now open. Remember that there are 2 separate tracks. One is for professional learning and one is for support to attain your computer science endorsement. Those close in October and April of 2027, respectively. And then a couple of quick updates on our first in the nation returning education to the states waiver implementation. We now have in place a statewide agreement to empower school district and non-public school leaders to choose and meaningful consultation to simplify the administration of equitable services to non-public schools. As a reminder, this is an opt-in feature. It does not impact the proportionate share or the amount of funds for equitable services as well. This spring, going into the school year, the opportunity to engage with this third-party provider was initiated through our procurement process. We now have a contract in place. The consultation agreements between our school districts and non-public schools closed on August 3rd. And we now have about 42 non-public schools, which is just under 20% of all accredited non-public schools utilizing this third-party option for the provision of equitable services and consultation with their school districts. And then shifting gears to special education very briefly, we were proud to have 2 Iowa best practices profiled at OSEP, the Office of Special Education Programs Leadership Conference last week. One is around our integrated special education data system, Achieve, which has the 24/7 parent or caregiver access portal, which is another first in the nation achievement of our team in support of our educators and families. And then also our new fiscal management processes were featured at the OSEP Leadership Conference last week. And then our SDI Mathematics Professional Learning and Coaching SDI Mathematics Professional Learning and Coaching have started this fall. And that learning package is offered to all districts who are designated as level 1 under IDEA-DA, the differentiated accountability system for special education, with options both for our elementary and our secondary staff. And then the last update within our regional and central divisions of special education is the launching again of our 26-27 policy and practice webinar series. Our first webinar was yesterday on August 12th, focused on all things preschool for administrators. And then for this first half of the school year, we'll have sessions focused on prior written notices, IEP team member roles and responsibilities, appropriate duties of paraeducators, and accessible educational materials.
That was well attended, or the first one.
I'm not sure what attendance was yesterday, but I'm happy to follow up. They have been historically well attended, and then they're recorded. So that
people
is
can watch them.
correct. That's that has really expanded access. So both the 24-25, 25-26, and then 26-27 series will all be available on our website with recordings and the supporting materials.
Good.
And then our Division of Higher Education has, of course, been supporting our SHEO colleagues, our State Higher Education Executive Officer colleagues across the nation in their work to implement Workforce Pell. I had the opportunity to present to the other state SHEOs, and then Amy presented to the broader SHEO conference just the day after the Workforce Pell announcement at Iowa Central. So we look forward to continuing to support our colleagues both at the SHEO and the institutional level in leveraging this incredible national opportunity. We've also launched a new grant program in the Division of Higher Education based on school districts' feedback to celebrate and replicate best practices. There's a new grant program called Excellence in Post-Secondary Readiness that recognizes school districts that demonstrate excellence in post-secondary readiness as reflected in the post-secondary readiness indicator on the Iowa School Performance Profile. Priority consideration is given to our schools with a high percentage of students with low-income backgrounds, and those awards will close on September 15th, and they are replication grants, so they expand best practices present in our schools and seek to expand those to peer schools across the state. And then second to last, our Teach Iowa Scholar Program opens on September 1st. As a reminder, this is a loan repayment or income bonus program that is awarded to qualified Iowa teachers who agree to teach in Iowa schools in a designated shortage area for 5 years. The maximum award is $20,000. It's payable in $4,000 increments over a 5-year period as the service obligation is completed. And then finally, last month, we partnered with the University of Iowa to host a week-long residential experience for our Gear Up students, designed to inspire the next generation of healthcare leaders, a critical need in our state and across the nation. It was an immersive program with hands-on exposure to careers in medicine, nursing, research, and other health-related fields. And then students also earned college credit for their participation. We've got an overview of the program and interview with students that are on our social media platforms and are available to view in the lobby as well. And then our last division, focusing on teacher quality and innovation. As you know, Iowa administered a new state summative assessment at the end of the 26 school year that aligns to and assesses student performance on the new Iowa academic standards that the board adopted in 2024 and that were first implemented in the 24-25 school year in both ELA, English Language Arts, and math. As a quick reminder of where we are in the process, we sought feedback through a public survey on proposed updates to the performance level descriptors to set the new achievement levels on the new state summative assessment. Those PLDs or performance level descriptors are descriptions of the knowledge and skills that a learner must demonstrate to be designated in one of Iowa's 4 new achievement levels. Then following that feedback this summer, we convened well over 100 educators from across the state to engage in the performance standard setting for our new state summative assessment. Recall that we're shifting from 3 performance levels to 4. So 3 performance levels currently are achievement, proficient, advanced proficient, and not yet proficient. And our 4 new achievement levels will be below, approaching, meeting, and exceeding grade level expectations to ensure language is clear and transparent to educators, families, and the public. So that process mirrored stage 2 of our content standards process. We're now about to enter stage 3, again, mirroring our content standards process, which is as school returns, we'll be focused on community engagement. That'll include regionally based listening sessions and a statewide survey. Then we'll have a second review committee. This mirrors stage 4 of the standards content process, utilizing the TAC or the Technical Advisory Committee to help review and incorporate that community feedback. And then those proposed recommendations will be taken to the state board for consideration, which is step 5 in our process. As a reminder, looking back to 2019 when this process last occurred, the results were finalized and released in November of that year, so we are likely tracking a similar timeline. And then let me pause and see if there are any questions before I shift to a quick update on other boards.
I want to preface this question by saying my daughter graduated from Drake in 2014, so she was my youngest. So it's been a while since I messed with FAFSA. But you said, I think it was 55%, it was mid-50s% of seniors completing it out. Is that required still for student loans, all federal grants, all college grants and stuff? Or is it, that seems lower than I would have guessed it just because of that?
It is the pathway for federal financial aid. We also utilize the FAFSA in our dozen state scholarship and grant programs that the Bureau of that Iowa College Aid and our Bureau.
So if they don't complete
Scholarship and
it,
grants.
they don't complete it. If the senior doesn't complete it, they're not eligible and they're not in the running for those grants.
It is a critical step, yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sir.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Okay, so this actually teed it up for me. So for FAFSA, it's only tracking the kids that graduate from high school that are going into college. Is that correct?
It's just the application for federal financial assistance. So that does not, that percentage does not include all students who may be pursuing post-secondary education opportunities.
So is there a way to track, because 55% again seems kind of low, right? But on the same sense, I think that's the growing number of people that are going into apprenticeship programs and
Sure.
that type of thing. Is there a way to track that as well? Is there a,
Absolutely. So we actually have a post, I'm looking at Jay, Dr. Pennington behind you. We have a post-secondary outcomes report that was pretty recently released.
Yes.
That has all relevant data about pursuit, about intent, about pursuit of, about completion in post-secondary training programs, and it includes registered apprenticeships. We have had a significant statewide increase in successful completion of registered apprenticeship programs.
Yeah, and then that's kind of my, it's the big push, right? Work-based learning, registered apprenticeship, that type of thing. As a apprenticeship sponsor, I've never been asked by anybody anywhere, like, who's coming into your program, who's doing it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's hard to track on where everybody's at and what's working, what's not working, how are we, even with Ellsworth, I have Ellsworth written down there. We gave, or the state or whoever gave a bunch of grants to Ellsworth. Are any of these programs that they've started up, plumbing, HVAC, construction, all that, are they tied to jobs?
They must demonstrate employer demand and employer partnership. So we can go back and review the specific credentials sought in the CAF awarded regional academies. And then to your question about the collection of RA data, do you want to jump into that?
Yeah, so the Iowa Post-Secondary Readiness Reports website, as Director Scott mentioned, does include percent of students that are enrolled and pursuing a registered apprenticeship. We get that data through a data sharing agreement with IWD. So Workforce has the list of all the approved apprenticeship programs. So we're relying on this, the connection and exchange of those data confidentially. We don't see student information in order to gauge how much and, what areas are the apprenticeships growing.
Gotcha. Because just me dealing with high schools, they're always asking, we want to put money into different programs, that type of thing, but we don't know the outcomes because they use FAFSA to do the outcomes. And so I get these questions all the time of, hey, how can especially the trades, I'm just speaking for the trades, but how can the trades help the high schools, the Department of Education say, okay, these are how many students graduated high school last year and came into all of our programs, right? And I think that's the missing step. I don't know how to explain it. Just with talking to high schools, and they have no clue where their students, if they don't fill out FAFSA, they have no clue where the students are ending up. And so when they want to put money into, like a Southeast Polk wants to put money into trades programs, but the school board's like, okay, how many kids are, I just don't know how to track it, I guess is my question. And I can track it myself, but how do we get everybody to track it and get clear data, the real data? Here's how many people graduated high school last 5 years. Here's how many turned out of the apprenticeship programs. No different than what you do with college, right? I just feel like if it's the big push of the state of Iowa to go into work-based learning and apprenticeships and that type of thing, we need to start working with apprenticeship sponsors to make sure that we're all on the same page. Like the right hand and the left hand know what each other is doing. And as far as the jobs with Ellsworth, I understand that somebody's told Ellsworth, this is what we're looking for, but what does that job look like a year down the road or 2 years, whenever they graduate, compared to 5 years? Like, is there I don't know. I just look at it and say, if we're going to give a community college money to open up these kind of programs that historically they haven't done, because apprenticeship programs have done it, what's the outcomes? Like, where are these kids ending up? They may get the credentials, but does it actually tie to a high paying career with good benefits and that type of thing? So that's all I was at. I just didn't know how all this is looked at. I'm new to this. Actually, half of the things you guys talk about, I have no clue. So I'm learning so much, reading a lot online, trying to figure all this stuff out because I come from a different, sector. But I just want to make sure if the state of Iowa is giving money to a community college saying train the next plumbers and HVAC, is it actually the outcome? Because I see a ton of them from DMAC and all across that the outcomes don't work out. And so that's where I guess that's my question is there an employer saying as soon as you graduate from Ellsworth, you're going to have a job day one making this much money? That's where I don't understand the outcome part of it. Like we can throw money at anything, but there's no outcome. What does it do? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. No,
I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but
those are a number of thoughtful questions. I think on one component, we're also happy to review. We've been incredibly outcomes focused and have shifted our community college accreditation process from being only compliance driven to being outcomes and continuous improvement focused. We also have our community college performance profiles available online that we can help navigate through. And then I think to your broader question, there are data limitations, especially out of state data limitations that we are working through it's called our State Longitudinal Data System, or SLDS, to ensure that we are able to appropriately celebrate the successes of students from K-12 to post-secondary, regardless of where they're pursuing post-secondary education. This is actually calendared for September. So we'll have a robust discussion about an independent report that articulates some of these recommendations and then our progress so far.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, just a comment, Jeremy. We appreciate everybody's lenses as they look at that, and you may not be an expert in everything, which none of us are, but you bring a special focus, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I definitely. My lens is not in all the stuff you guys deal in. You guys know all that kind of stuff. I'm more of an outcome. Like, what's it going to be for a job, right? A career. Like, that's what I want to see all students in Iowa. Here's what my career path is. This is what I want to do. Let's move towards that. So thank you.
And then just one final point, Workforce Pell, for example, programs are identified and then get to continue to participate based on not just their employment, but their earnings.
Gotcha.
To your point.
Gotcha.
Very briefly, other department boards, the Board of Educational Examiners met on August 11th. And then the Community College Advisory Committee met just yesterday. And then upcoming, we have SEEP, the Special Education Advisory Panel, the Child Development Coordinating Council, and the Iowa Dyslexia Board all meeting in September. If you are interested in attending any of those meetings, we're happy to provide you the information.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Item 3 on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the meeting minutes on June 18th, and then 3 appeal decisions, 2 from Seymour, 1 from Newton. Those are on the consent because there were no timely appeals filed for those appeal decisions. So it's routine approval. I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion.
Jeremy's moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. All right. Rules. Our rules guy. Thomas, the floor is yours.
President Robbins, members of the board, department colleagues, we have 4 rulemakings with recommended actions today. The first concerns Chapter 12 and some final rules regarding Senate File 496. So as a reminder, this is a federal litigation that went up and down to the 8th Circuit, the federal appeals court that governs our territory, regarding the constitutionality of this particular statute. the department proposes adding two clarifying rules or two pieces of clarification into the rule. The first concerns library materials. So the statute creates a complaint process for addressing challenged library materials. On recommendation from the Attorney General's office, any complaint must now pinpoint in the material itself what is the offensive conduct or content. What is the graphic depiction or description of a sex act, rather than just saying this book contains something that might be offensive or might be illegal. Point to the actual page, point to the actual timestamp in the audio file or the video file, rather than, you know, the infamous they told me that this book was somehow offensive. The second item in this proposed rulemaking adds some context to the statutory provision on instruction or promotion of sexual orientation or gender identity in the elementary grade bands. And based on some, as the record was developed, as the case was developed in the proceedings before the Eighth Circuit, the recommendation was to add in this sub-rule applies only to mandatory provisions of a district's curriculum. So if a student group wanted to form a voluntary student group, a voluntary activity, this prohibition on promotion or instruction would not apply to that voluntary group. During the regulatory analysis process, the American Civil Liberties Union submitted a public comment asking for even more detail in the proposed rules. A lot of the detail that they are requesting is already matters that were addressed by the Eighth Circuit. So as a rule writer, I have, and you as rules adopters have a tension between wanting to put in good ideas, but wanting to put in good ideas that might already be addressed by some other source of law. So the department is going to consider that additional comment during the public comment period after these rules are noticed, and maybe invite other organizations to weigh in whether or not these additions requested by the ACLU are necessary and proper for rulemaking, or they're not necessary and proper because they are wrong, or not necessary or proper because they're already addressed in some other binding source of law. So that's where we are with the first rulemaking package. Do you have any questions for me?
Does this apply to accredited non-publics?
Yes.
So item 2D, it says mandatory portions of the district's curriculum. It doesn't really say or authorities in charge of non-publics or wherever that terminology always is. Because the word district is there, and generally speaking, that means that non-pubs are not included.
We'll address that and adopt it and file if necessary.
Thank you.
And a lot of this is context, like this is a new paragraph and what is above it, what is surrounding it. So if it's necessary to address it, will be addressed, adopted and filed.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions about Chapter 12, Senate File 496? The recommendation is to give notice of the intent to amend this chapter.
So moved. I keep waiting for Erica and Cassandra if they want to put their name in the minutes, but anyway.
Been moved by Jeff, second by
I'll second.
Jeremy. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. All right. We have some technical corrections for Chapter 12.
So one substantive change and one change in terminology. The substantive change in this proposed rulemaking is a cleanup regarding fine arts. So the underlying statute requires 2 units of fine arts, which may include any of the following: dance, music, vocal music, instrumental music, drama, studio art. The rules didn't catch up with that change and required at least 2 of those offerings. So you'd have to offer vocal music and studio art, or vocal music and instrumental music. That is in excess of what the statute would allow. That's in excess of the takes away discretion of the statute otherwise would grant to school districts in putting together their fine arts offerings. So the language will include at least 2 to may include any of the following. So that's just aligning with the underlying statute. The second, and most of the text, concerns the changing of the term subgroup to student group. Student group sounds more, it's got a more positive connotation to it. An eagle-eye reader might notice in item 2, there is a reference to gender on the list of student groups that will at a subsequent rulemaking be changed, just a blanket find and replace to sex as required by the last legislative session. But rather than doing one change here and then doing the same change elsewhere in the rules later, we'll stick with the technical corrections here and then make that change to item 2 when the rest of the references to gender in chapter 12 are corrected to refer to sex. So with that, truly technical in nature, one need to do and one good idea to do. And with that, I'm open for questions.
Questions about this rule? Hearing none, the recommendation is to give notice of the intent to amend chapter 12 as presented.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Jeremy.
I can second.
Thank
It's so
you,
hard to
Cass.
do this from the virtual land, so.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. All right, rules and notice for chapter 21.
This chapter implements provisions of House File 2610. There are 2 components to this rulemaking. The first is a uniform framework for general education courses. So that's item 1. That uniform framework between community colleges was required by Senate File 2610. Item 2, statewide common course numbering system. So if it is a common course across multiple community colleges, it has this, with the same learning outcomes, it gets the same course number. The purpose is to ensure transferability. One public comment on this at the regulatory analysis stage. One organization, 2 different comments, same general request. And the request is that the common course numbering system be limited to sort of general education, transfer major coursework only, rather than common course numbering for credit bearing career and technical education courses. I have we have colleagues from the community colleges team, including the chief drafter of the underlying rule text, my colleague Katrina Hope, who could answer questions that I can't. But the basis for why the department is not at this time recommending limiting that common course numbering to or excluding career and tech ed courses from the common course numbering system is twofold. The purpose of the common course numbering system is to ensure like equitability and ease of transfer. Folks don't solely transfer to a 4-year institution. folks transfer between majors within a community college and between community colleges, both in transfer majors as well as career and technical education. And the second reason is it's kind of a dotted line between what is a transfer major and what is career and technical education. Is accounting career and technical education, or is it a transfer major class? Depends on how it's described. If it's described commonly across community colleges, the department's view based on this legislation is that it gets a common number. So students are aware of the comparability, so that other institutions are aware of the comparability, so that external users of the transcript, such as employers, are aware of the comparability. So that is the department will continue to consider at the notice stage arguments about why this should be limited. My colleagues tell me that there is a staged process where this will be implemented by the community colleges, starting first with the core coursework for transfer majors and then scaling out over time. But right now, the department, the subject matter experts, and me, the generalist rules coordinator, would say that there's no statutory authority to limit it solely to transfer majors. By statutory text, it applies to all credit bearing courses. With that, if you have any questions that I can't answer, I'm going to defer to my colleagues. And the department's open to questions.
Comment, secondary schools went through this process quite a few years ago. And I don't think career and technical were excluded from that. Just a comment. Any questions or comments for Thomas with this intended action for chapter 21?
I just have a question. Any feedback from the community colleges on this one?
The feedback was to amend item 2 or limit item 2 towards transfer major coursework. Did I use the right terms? Yeah. So general, like core coursework for transfer majors, not all credit bearing course. So that was the feedback, at least as it was represented from the advocacy organization.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, the recommendation is to give notice of intent to amend chapter 21.
So moved.
Moved by Jeff.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Erica. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. All right, chapter 41.
The chapter 41 is the special education rules chapter. This proposed rulemaking addresses some practice concerns that the department has identified in recent site visits concerning children who are placed by their school district or by their IEP teams outside of their resident district at a special school, a special program, primarily for students with challenging behaviors. The concern reflected in item 1 is state law requires parents to be provided procedural safeguards in IEP teams and placement teams to go through some extra steps if the placement is at a special school. And then there's been quite a bit of perseveration and humming and hawing about whether or not this place is a school or a program or a facility or a location. And so the rule clarifies the underlying intent of this language, that whenever a child is placed by the IEP team someplace special, whether it's a special school, a program, a facility, a location, that these 4 questions, the questions themselves are not amended. but it makes clear it does, the label applied to the place that the child is going to receive services that cannot be addressed in their resident building. The label is not determinative. It is the fact that you are going someplace else, triggering the answering of these 4 questions. The second item is to address some concerns with those out of resident building placements. Not saying anybody listening or in this room would do this, but out of sight, out of mind. I've sent this student to this special place over here, and my sole involvement is just cutting the check rather than attending the IEP team, gathering progress measurement data, determining whether or not this still is an appropriate placement. And so this would require that as part of the contract that the resident district has with this special school placement location, facility, attendance center, whatever it's called, that it remains involved, remains its duty as the placing entity is to ensure that that thing that I'm sending taxpayer money to, and most importantly, my student to, follows the law, ensures that the processes are followed, and that including, and this is the additional language, including attending or otherwise participating in team meetings. So a lot of times our recent site visit where the resident district, the district that's responsible for committing resources, didn't come to IEP meetings. And this is a point of emphasis. If a child is going to some whole nother location, you're going to those meetings to ensure that that location is providing a FAPE. Maybe you're not there in person, maybe you're there remotely, maybe you send a designee, but you're involved in that child's programming. And so with that, I'm open for questions. The recommendation is to give notice. There were no comments at the regulatory analysis about this particular rulemaking.
Questions or comments?
I'm not sure it's a question or a comment, but trying to understand, and you used it in your explanation several times about outside of the public school building, using the word building instead of district, and for a larger district where they may move a kid from elementary school A to elementary school B, because that's where the students, that's where the program is that can serve this child. You're using the word building instead of district. Is that intentional? I'm not following why building and not district.
So I think in larger districts, I'm using my hometown, Davenport North. Davenport North, specialty programs for certain types of low incidence disabilities are at North. Others might be at Central or West. So I think that this is a clarification that might need to be made adopted and filed for how does this look in a single building district? How does this look in a larger district where there's administrative discretion about where the program is to be located? So that's some of that could also be handled in the that the child would otherwise attend. So if a district has a policy that students with this level of need go to this particular attendance center, that's the school that the child otherwise would attend. It's if I'm tuitioning out or transferring out of Davenport North to some whole nother place. So the intent was not to disturb that, but we'll check the language and adopt it and file.
The recommendation is to give notice of intended action for chapter 41 as presented.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Jeremy,
I'm a second.
second by Jeff. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. All right. Morningside, University Educator Preparation. Just a note to the group that after this presentation, we'll be taking a short break. Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, President Robbins, Director Snow, and members of the board. My name is Amy Mayer. I'm a program consultant on the educator quality team, and with me today is the Dean of Morningside University School of Education, Dr. Kelly Chain. Good morning.
Kelly.
Morningside University's teacher and teacher intern preparation programs were granted conditional approval by the board in December of 2025. While in compliance with the majority of the standards in Chapter 79 and then former Chapter 77, 3 standards needed additional oversight and time for the program to resolve. In addition, the board noted several concerns had direct correlations to Morningside's previous review. In granting conditional approval, the board requested 2 progress monitoring updates prior to a recommendation for full approval. That first update was provided to the board in April and resolved 2 faculty standards. We're here today to share a final conditional progress monitoring update for the last concern in the teacher intern program of study standard. During the original review, the team did not find sufficient evidence that candidates in the teacher intern special education tracks demonstrated knowledge and application of the Iowa academic standards. In addition, the curricular approaches towards those standards were not equitable for the behavior disorder and learning disability, or BDLD track, and the intellectual disability, or ID track. Through progress monitoring, the department was able to complete a more in-depth review of the revisions Morningside made to curriculum, assessments, and instructional resources to address this concern. Morningside completed a comprehensive revision of the learning assessment framework and, more importantly, embedded the Iowa academic standards throughout candidate preparation. The program revised the lesson planning model to emphasize standards alignment, incorporated a backward design framework to guide instructional planning, and added expert video resources to unpack state standards into measurable learning objectives. In addition, instructional supports include a universal design for learning resource suite, centralized access to the Iowa academic standards, and direct links to essential elements and dynamic learning maps that support standard-based instruction for students with disabilities. These changes were reinforced through 12 new or revised assignments or assessments across both special education intern tracks. This includes a culminating literacy unit plan requiring explicit alignment between learning objectives and the Iowa academic standards, ensuring candidates demonstrate the ability to design rigorous instruction that is accessible to all learners. One key piece of evidence the program provided is a revised curriculum map that you see several pieces of on this slide. The curriculum map demonstrates how interns in both special education tracks experience a consistent curriculum while still focused on the needs of their specific learner groups. You can see that the map identifies where the curriculum introduces, reinforces, and ultimately measures mastery across coursework, field experiences, and the intern seminar. The alignment extends to course readings, instructional resources, assignments, and assessments, with specific Iowa academic standards learning outcomes. This provides a clear progression of candidate learning and ensures the work is grounded in a coherent framework. A significant component of Morningside's program revision was the creation of a program concept review, or as they call PCR process, designed to measure multiple candidate understanding of the Iowa academic standards at multiple points throughout the program. What you're seeing is a visual representation of that PCR pathway that moves interns through introduction, application, and mastery, keeping the Iowa academic standards as the main focus throughout the methods and clinical components of the program. It is accompanied by an FAQ fact sheet as a reference for students. Pre and post surveys were conducted to assess candidate development and confidence with the Iowa academic standards along that PCR pathway. This is data from the first implementation of the pre and post surveys that demonstrates the success Morningside immediately saw through that initial PCR implementation. Blue representing confident responses, red somewhat confident, and orange not confident. As you see in the graphs, confidence increased from 64% to 83%, and all candidates reported some measure of confidence following instruction and interventions. The university also used survey findings to identify areas for continued emphasis and are already incorporating those in ongoing improvement efforts. Finally, Morningside took the opportunity to enhance their already existing Teacher Intern Summer Institute by developing a new workshop for all interns in the special education tracks for its just completed July 2026 session. This session, entitled Anchoring Specialized Instruction in the Iowa Academic Standards, featured IEP simulations, effective instructional scaffolding, maintaining rigorous academic expectations, and preserving the integrity of the standards for all learners. The learning extended that deepened understandings and established in the PCR pathway, and provided interns with additional opportunities to apply decision-making in authentic special education contexts and strengthen the delivery of instruction aligned to the Iowa academic standards. We would like to compliment Dr. Cheney and her team at Morningside. They didn't just add coursework to the Iowa academic standards to address this concern. Instead, they invested time and resources and engaged in a comprehensive program revision, the evidence of which you've just seen. Morningside has demonstrated successful resolution of this concern and provided evidence of ongoing sustained compliance, with evidence for continued compliance to be reviewed during a standard one-year follow-up meeting. With all concerns now successfully addressed, it is our recommendation that the board resolve the program's conditional status and grant full approval for Morningside University's teacher and teacher intern preparation programs through 2032. We're open for any questions you might have.
Kelly, what would you like to add to those presented?
We appreciate the support and the conversation and guidance that Amy provided us through this process. My team really did embrace this challenge, and you can see that from some of the innovative things that we did, especially the concept of PCRs, which are basically formative assessments along the way at a programmatic level, is something that we're implementing not just in our intern program, but in our other programs as well, because it just gives us another little nugget of data to make sure that we're getting our students where they need to go. So we're excited to do that kind of work, and happy to be able to be here to share it with you today.
Comments or questions for Amy or Kelly? Just a comment there. Sounds like you did a very nice job as far as following through and not just doing the bare minimum to get by. So we appreciate that. I'm sure your students do as well.
Indeed. Yes.
So the recommendation is to give full accreditation, full approval for Morningside through the 31-32 academic year. I would entertain a motion.
I would make that motion.
Thank you, Cass.
Seconded.
There you go. Thank you, Erica. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. We will take a 10-minute break of Emmaus University Educative Program. Welcome.
Morning.
Good morning.
Director Snow and members of the board. It's good to be here. My name is Lindsay Harrison. I'm a program consultant with the Educator Quality Team, and one of my responsibilities is the state approval process for accreditation of teacher preparation programs. And I'm joined by my team member Miriam Rodzabo and Amy, you had the last presentation. And also from Emmaus, we have the department chair, Lori Kratzer, and we also have Joel Carter, who's the vice president and dean of academic affairs, in the audience today. So I'm going to take some time to share some information about the program review process first, and then some key points from the Emmaus review and what we found. It's followed by Lori, who will share some highlights. And you have a copy of the report. So the educator preparation process moves through a 7-year accreditation cycle. So Emmaus was last granted approval in 2018. My colleague and I engaged in an extensive review to verify and validate their compliance with the educator preparation program standards in Chapter 79 and provide recommendations for continuous improvement. A broad overview you can see on this slide of the different interviews and classroom visits that we had.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we presented several different types of feedback to the program, 3 types of feedback: strengths to celebrate when they were going above and beyond. Recommendations were shared with the program to just recognize or act on things that could be improved, and then concerns. And the goal with the concerns was to find resolution with those prior to our time together. So before I walk you through each of the standards, I wanted to just highlight that our team is recommending conditional approval for Emmaus today. You can see here that 3 of the standards were met and 3 of them require additional monitoring. So given the volume and the depth of the review, it's typical that we find many recommendations and even findings and concerns. It's problematic when we have systematic repeated concerns, and in this case, there were 6 repeated concerns from the previous review in 2018. And I do want to say that the university has made significant progress addressing the recommendations and concerns during the review. They worked carefully with their administration, who has been strongly supportive to give them the resources they need to update policies and practices and assessment systems. And I also wanted to point out that Emmaus has 100% pass rate on their Foundations of Reading test right now, which shows that their candidates are being well prepared, even if some of the internal systems might need some polishing, as we will discuss. So several improvements are now in place, and some, as I will describe, are just going to require some additional time to make sure that they have the ability to be sustained for their effectiveness. So it's impossible to check if the process for analyzing data is going to work until you have the data to analyze. And so just need some more time to do those things. So we will recommend them for conditional approval and then monitor, similar to Morningside, to make sure that the changes they have in motion are going to be continuing to be working. So now I'll talk about each of the standards. The first standard is governance, which is considered met. They had several recommendations in this area and have a strong commitment to continuous improvement by responding to each of those recommendations and really not brushing them off and thinking about them carefully. The first recommendation centered on strengthening the conceptual framework, and they also they responded to that by making a timeline to do so and created a more transparent budgeting process and updating their appeal process. There were also there was also a recommendation and a concern related to staffing. The recommendation was related to resources to support this process of the review process, and the concerns required strengthening their administrative support personnel and providing training for their clinical practice coordinator. The review team also found that the advisory committee was not providing input twice a year as required, and so they developed a plan outlining regular meetings and expanding their membership to get a broader range of representation on this. So I just wanted to mention that several of the concerns that they had in this standard and others really centered on the need to kind of document and formalize processes to make things sustainable. So for example, this standard had some collaboration across colleges between content area experts that needed to be just a formalized process rather than informal. So what they did was create a tool called the Teacher Education Department Administrative Handbook, which was a lengthy document that they just put everything into to be able to keep track of things for the future. So that will be a tremendous resource and is very detailed for their program to provide a central location for all these policies and procedures and governance processes. So that will, we believe, really ensure clarity and sustainability as they move forward and any turnover and changes that they may have. So that was a really positive thing that we'll keep seeing coming up here. So the second standard is the faculty standard, and in response to the recommendation in this section, again, they added to this new administrative handbook some formal position descriptions, so it was more clear with role checklists, like whose responsibilities is it to do different things and what time of year that might happen. So those duties won't get lost and really improve consistency. So this is a section where Emmaus is on a good path forward, but we need a little bit more time to ensure that the systems they have devised can be implemented. One concern that correlated with the previous visit was faculty who were teaching outside of their grade level of experience. So they resolved the concerns in this instance by making co-teaching assignments and also making plans to have faculty gain experience at those other opposite levels.
Lindsay, may I ask a question?
Sure.
The amount or the student enrollment numbers aren't real large. Is that contributing to some of these issues where you're trying to cover a lot of different areas with a limited number of faculty?
I don't think so. Well, sort of, because of course there are fewer faculty members on campus. But something that happened in the secondary level, when there is a K-12 range of endorsement being taught, the individual who has a 5-12 will need to have experience also in kindergarten through 8, which is one of our endorsements, to be able to teach any candidate that is getting endorsement below the grade 5. So some individuals have the great experience. So for example, if somebody is teaching math and they have only experience and endorsement in 5-12 math, and they would have the knowledge and skills to teach that, but we would want them to have methodology of teaching to grades kindergarten through 5 or kindergarten through 8. So with that, there are some solutions in place. So either they would have to take the methods class and apply for a BOEE license and get that, or they can gain that experience through additional collaboration that they do in the K-12. They would be able to do some substitute teaching, some co-teaching with the teachers in those grade levels, so that they could make up for that experience that they also need to have in the different grade level that they were being prepared.
Thank you.
So these, the first bigger bullet there is about just getting the individuals that we're teaching kind of at the opposite grade levels more experience and setting up some co-teaching situations to make sure that the appropriate faculty were in there. The last bullet here was about inconsistent evidence of evaluation of adjuncts and faculty, and they made a new policy which they added to their handbook with a clearly defined process so that it's based within the unit, the evaluation process. So that's one where we just need more time to see how that's going to play out, that they have time to evaluate faculty and make sure that that system is working. So that was the second standard, faculty. The next standard is about assessment. This one is also not met yet, but they've made a lot of growth in setting up a new assessment system for supporting candidates here. For the recommendations, they made a policy to support candidates who were experiencing struggling. They also discontinued the use of the C-BASE assessment, which they found was not providing useful data about their candidates, and revised some clinical and disposition assessments to increase the opportunities for candidates to receive feedback on in-test standards. In response to the concerns, Emmaus went to a lot of effort and spent detailed time really revising their assessment system. And you can see some of those details around page 32 of the report, but they created lots of new documents and processes and had a summer retreat, which the administration helped to support. And they assigned faculty duties specifically related to assessment and went through a process to improve reliability and validity. But this is another area that we just need to monitor this year to make sure the new systems are functioning well. So that was assessment. And the next one here, the clinical practice. In this area, I really want to focus towards the concerns. So I'm just going to briefly mention how Emmaus responded to the recommendations. They developed a system to track diverse field placements, intentionally aligned pre-student teaching experiences, and strengthened documentation of candidate interactions with families and guardians. And in the first concern was about the qualifications of supervisors, as the site team found that Emmaus was supervising students for this special education endorsement, which is actually offered by the University of Dubuque. And since Emmaus isn't authorized to offer that endorsement, they updated the policies with the University of Dubuque so that the supervision is covered by that university. Related, they were required to update their policy for aligning supervisor expertise with the area where students are placed. Emmaus responded to the second concern by working to update clinical observation forms to align with INTASC standards. They also have future work planned to create rubrics and more tasks and just make sure those things are working. On the third concern, the team found evidence that the candidates have not always met the minimum required hours of each clinical experience. There was some evidence that there wasn't a reliable process for documenting the practicum hours, especially when they transfer from another institution. So Emmaus developed a process to document those candidate clinical experience hours for evaluating and recording transfer hours. The next concern was one area that was surprising. It came to light because of some questions prior to the visit about a situation where student teachers were not placed with cooperating teachers who had the same licensure type. In fact, 2 student teachers were serving as a teacher of record in a school where the license wasn't required. So the situation was resolved in that candidates chose not to receive the Iowa teaching license and continued working in this school where the license wasn't required. But since the state of Iowa is approving this program, we want the program to be set up so that any candidate going through will automatically be able to receive the Iowa license. So they resolved that by developing new policies and really getting those in place with this one. The fifth concern, the site visit team found some observations of student teachers would be clustered together rather than spread out across the semester. And the documentation varied with how much feedback the students received. So Emmaus responded to that by really strengthening and updating their forms and then updating their process with the new clinical practice director to oversee and make really clear expectations for those supervisors. So this is another one where you just need to see that some of these new policies are going to be sustainable. The sixth concern in this area, the team found the training of the cooperating teachers was not equivalent to the 1 day, which is specified in the code. And this was a repeat concern. And in response, Emmaus expanded the workshop by implementing a more comprehensive orientation, pre-training materials, and ongoing monthly communications. So now we feel they have good policies in place that will help to ensure these types of concerns don't happen again. So that's this standard. The knowledge, skills, and disposition standard is considered met. In this area, Emmaus is commended for the focus they have for all students, providing purposeful experiences with students who are learning English. They also went through a rigorous curriculum review process using the Iowa Literacy Workbook, which served to strengthen their curriculum, which is evident they have strong curriculum, as I mentioned earlier, with their passing of the FORTS test. So based on the team's recommendation, Emmaus made changes to their curriculum to strengthen the secondary content related to literacy and include adaptations for different types of learners and update policies to ensure placement variety. And there were 4 concerns in this area, and Emmaus responded to all of the concerns. So this is considered that. And to summarize those, the team found that students in the ELL endorsement had not taken all of the courses that were approved by the Board of Educational Examiners. Emmaus went through a thorough audit of graduates from the past 7 years, required to prove how each candidate with missing courses had met the competencies of the approved endorsements. They also revised the ESL endorsement for moving forward. The team worked with Emmaus on best practices for practicum placements for that K-12 endorsement. And it will continue to check back with them on how their new policies are playing out. So they also updated content related to substance use disorder, addressed literacy content changes that were needed, and created a policy for verifying transfer course credit. So in conclusion, based on the evidence, the review team recommends a conditional approval for Emmaus's teacher preparation program. That our team will continue to support them as they move through the next year with progress monitoring during the conditional period. We're goal of resolving these concerns and making sure the new systems are working over the next year, and we'll return to the board when we can make a full recommendation. And before we move to questions, I'll turn it over to Lori to share some more things about the program.
Sure. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak with you this morning, and thank you for everything that you do for Iowa schools and teachers and for teacher prep programs and ultimately for our learners. I just want to highlight some of the strengths that were mentioned, but also additional things, and then some of the ways that we're addressing the concerns. Emmaus is one of 4 teacher preparation programs in Dubuque, and we enjoy a strong rapport and a good reputation with the other colleges and in the community. We've built strong collaboration both with private and public K-12 schools. Our program requires our candidates to complete 115 clinical hours before they get to student teaching. We are preparing teachers in some high-need areas, so our ESL graduates are consistently hired for ESL positions, and some of our graduates or candidates who pursue an ESL endorsement in addition to an elementary or a secondary degree as well are hired for ESL positions after they graduate. For literacy, we've been working on bringing our curriculum into alignment with the science of reading since 2021. As was mentioned, we have 100% passing on our report rate. Another piece of data I looked at the last 7 years, all of our candidates that were recommended for a K-6 classroom teaching license in elementary were also recommended for a K-8 reading endorsement. Since you are considering a recommendation for conditional approval, I do want to just share some of the ways that we have been able to follow through on the things that were promised in the report in the areas where we are working on coming into compliance. For the faculty standard, we were able to address the issues regarding teaching faculty during the semester where we received the feedback from the site visit. We designed and are using a procedure for documenting faculty credentials to ensure that all of our current courses are taught by qualified, experienced faculty. For the assessment standard, we've developed a clear assessment overview and updated our reporting process. We've also developed spreadsheets that are allowing us to aggregate both candidate and program data in ways that are more accessible and usable. As mentioned, we've revised the rubrics we use to assess the in-task standards in our courses, and then revised our clinical assessments as well to be aligned with the in-task standards. And the university provided a stipend for the faculty to work on these tools this summer so that they would be ready for use this fall. So just like in 2 weeks when we start. For the clinical practice standard, our clinical practice director has been using updated procedures and tools to verify and document all the school and supervisor credentials for this past year and to track the completion and diversity of all the field hours for all of our current candidates. We're addressing multiple concerns, many of which involve detailed changes, and we realize it can be difficult, or it can be easy, I guess, to create new policies and then forget what it was that we had planned to do. And we've been able to overcome this through developing 2 administrative tools, which were alluded to by Dr. Harrison, our handbook, which documents and organizes these policy decisions as we make them, and the development of faculty role checklists, which map out all of those changes in policy across the academic year and helps us to keep track of what it is we're supposed to be working on as well as what is coming. Through making all these changes, we have had the benefit of a very supportive culture at Emmaus. Our administration, and especially our university president and the vice president for academic affairs, understand the effort that's required to design or build new systems and implement them. And they have ensured that we have resources so that we're able to focus on building those systems and making sure that they're working. We feel like we are producing good teachers for our community, but we also have worked hard to address the guidance from the site visit team, both in requirements and recommendations. And we're confident that we have the systems and support in place to ensure that the changes we're making are sustainable so that we can best prepare teachers who are able to support learners. So thank you for reviewing this and listening, and thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Lori. Questions or comments for the team? I just have I'm not sure it's a concern, I'll call it a concern. Some of these issues were present at a previous site visit. When we sit here today and it sounds like we had things lined up, how confident will we be later when we come to have a final approval for unconditional approval, where things have lapsed, I guess, since the last time you were here?
Thanks for asking that question. Looking at the previous concerns has become one of the processes that was recommended by this board. And that was the reason that we decided that even though they address those concerns, the conditional approval would be more appropriate, because we need to monitor and make sure that the processes they are putting in place are meaningful and they are implementing them. We have tried to see if what they are putting in place is more of a system rather than a solution that is just a one-time resolving a concern, but not having a system in place, not having a policy that everybody learn and practice. So our goal is to provide them with more systems that are sustainable. With 7 years from now, that's one of the goals when we go and work with any of the programs. Our goal is to not have similar concerns when we go back in 7 years. In fact, for 2 of those concerns that was presented, the one that candidates were teaching in the classroom in a private school that would allow that with some certificate that they had that would check their qualification, but it would not be enough for our state requirements. The other concern was some of the EL preparation and the fact that we had to do all of that auditing, and it could have been a very bad situation if they couldn't show evidence that their candidates were prepared. So we even looked at if we need to consider non-approval recommendation, but because the institution had taken the time to do the self-study and recognize a lot of these ahead of time, and they had started working on resolving them when we went on the site visit, and because they have the commitment from their leadership, we want to support them to address the concerns. And then our team will be reviewing their annual report, which they will be required to report on all of these concerns for minimally 3 years from now. And that's one of the areas that my team is trying to focus on, working, how can we work with the programs to make sure that concerns don't go back to being a concern or repeat, especially with the resources. That's an area that we see becoming more and more of a challenge for programs.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Other comments or questions? All right, so the recommendation is to grant Emmaus University's teacher preparation program conditional approval for 1 year.
So moved.
Moved by Jeff,
I'll second.
second by Jeremy. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Iowa Lakes.
Thank you.
Good morning, President Robbins and board members. My name is Amy Giske, Division Administrator for the Higher Education and Post-Secondary Readiness Division. And I'm here today to provide an update on the Iowa Lakes Conditional Accreditation Report, which was presented to you at your last meeting. As you will recall, the conditional accreditation of Iowa Lakes Community College required completion of a corrective action plan that would get the college caught up on its 3 outstanding audits for fiscal year 23, 24, and 25. Per the corrective action plan created by the college and external auditors and approved by the state board, the FY23 audit was due June 30th, 2026. That audit has not yet been submitted. So I'm here along with Iowa Lakes President Scott Stokes, who is joining us via Zoom. Hello, Scott. I believe I saw you. And we'll provide an update on the status of that FY23 audit. To do that, I'd like to update you on 2 meetings that have occurred between your last meeting and today. First, a meeting held between the department, myself, and the Iowa Lakes Local Board of Trustees to update them on the conditional accreditation and corrective action plan, which is required by code if a college is conditionally accredited. And then second, we had a meeting with the department, Whitley, which is the college's current auditor, and Iowa Lakes, including President Stokes, their CFO, and a member of their board. So I'd like to first start with that meeting with the Iowa Lakes board. That meeting was held July 21st. And at that meeting, I reviewed with the board a summary of the college's accreditation report, the recommendation findings, and the required follow-up steps. As just a reminder for you, the accreditation report, it did include the finding related to the 3 outstanding audits, and the required follow-up items were that Iowa Lakes provide an update to you all next spring, 2027, on the status of the audits, that the college meet quarterly with the department and the auditor so that we're all on the same page on the status of the audits being completed, that the college submit monthly financials to the department, and that they complete the outstanding audits on the timeline that we established. So during that meeting with the local board, I reinforced to the board that conditional accreditation at the community college level is rare and a serious matter. It was evident to me in our conversation that the board does understand the seriousness of the matter and is willing to put resources into ensuring that the audits are completed. With support of the local board, the college has contracted with its prior auditor. So prior to Whitley, they worked with Williams and Company. So they have brought Williams and Company back on board to provide support in getting caught up with their outstanding audits. And then they're also contracting with Jeff Soper, who was their prior CFO who resigned this summer, to provide additional support to the college in getting caught up with these audits. At the meeting, we discussed the list of outstanding audit items, which was 15 items at the time. We went through that list of items. This past Tuesday was when we held our first quarterly meetings with the auditor, the college, and the department. As of Tuesday's meeting, there were only 4 open items remaining. The auditors confirmed that there was very little left that they were requesting from Iowa Lakes. The outstanding items mostly related to Whitley's questions and getting caught up to speed on some of Iowa community college programs, like the 260E program is unique to Iowa. This is Whitley's first audit of an Iowa community college, so there's just a learning curve there. I asked the auditors if they were getting information they needed in a timely manner, and it was reported that the last 3 months have been excellent. Information has been flowing from the college and questions are being answered in a timely manner for this during this last quarter. Additional resources that have been put into place by the college appear to be helping the timeline. Whitley indicated that Williams and Company has been really excellent to work with. They also indicated to help get caught up with the audits that Whitley themselves will have a dedicated staff member starting in October to help work exclusively on the Iowa Lakes audits. So we hope that will help with the timeline as well. Whitley did say that after the 4 remaining items are complete, they will need time to review quality control and write the report. Their initial projected timeline that they helped come up with, that was the June 30th timeline, they reported on Tuesday was based on a modified opinion. They thought they might need to give a modified opinion, but now that they've gotten the data that they need, they're thinking that this will be closer to a clean opinion, a cleaner audit with maybe some minor recommendations. They're thinking that September, early October is when they will finish their process. They also indicated that they needed to do a deeper audit than they typically do due to the state audit that we discussed last time. After the FY23 audit, we moved to FY24, which is scheduled to be due January 1st, 2027. So while this first audit has been delayed, the auditors were still hopeful that that timeline could be hit. They're bringing on their additional support, and then with the college's additional support, that's still a possibility. Iowa Lakes will begin compiling documentation as soon as they finish up these 4 items. They'll complete documentation. Then they will start working on the 24 compilation of materials. So they're going to get started as quickly as possible on the 24 while Whitfley is writing the 23 audit. And then finally, at that meeting, the college and Whitfley discussed strategies for more actively and regularly engaging the local audit committee. So the local board does have an audit committee, and they're going to develop some strategies to just ensure that that local board is more timely updated on the status of the audits. That is what I have for notes. President Stokes, is there anything you would like to add?
I don't know. I might mention that we did ask a lot of questions about like the financial aid, because they talked about taking a deeper dive based on the state auditor's report. And so they have a financial aid expert that used to work in financial aid that does all of their financial aid audits for all of the states that they have clients in. And in their deeper dive, they did not find any findings as far as what the state auditors did. And she indicated she felt like that was because they have an expert that they really do trust, that all they do is financial aid, and they used all of the reports that the guidelines say they should be using. So I guess that made myself and our board president feel really, really good, just because we've been fighting that a little bit with the auditor's office as far as financial aid guidelines and the reports that we use to verify attendance. So having a financial aid expert dig in and come back with that was really a positive for us. And yes, Amy mentioned it. Our board is fully on board with providing all of the resources financially that they can to help us speed this up as much as we can. I know they approved an invoice last month that was about $14,000 for Williams and Company, and we're going to continue to do that. We're looking to meet with them here in a couple weeks to really get them on board to complete all of the documents that they can help us with for the FY24 audit. We know that they'll start to get busy at the end of fall when all of the farmers start getting done. Their other side of the business will pick up. So we want to make sure that we can get as much out of them here before they get really busy as we can. So we have the documents ready to upload to Whitfley's so they can get the FY24 audit done. Our goal is to meet all of the timelines. So we're working as hard as we can to meet the next timeline and then the timeline after that. And so we did discuss becoming more efficient for each audit. And I have communicated with our director of finance that we're going to get really efficient at doing audits. So when we get through this process, we will be really, really good at doing those and be able to be really efficient. Any questions for us?
So we're looking at the 23 audit being completed in September or October.
Correct. That's what Whitfley reported yesterday, Tuesday.
Okay, and originally we thought it would be in June.
Yeah.
I'll just ask you, so what happens if that deadline's missed?
So we have the timeline in the corrective action plan was outlined through FY26. I mean, that decision comes back to this board. I think that question has to be answered at this table. They are conditionally accredited, and then we'll be asked to come back and report. So I think options could be an additional accreditation year. We would just have to talk through options.
Okay. Thank you.
Scott, has there been anything concerns as far as major or minor concerns with the 23 audit that you know of?
So we did, she said the only finding that that she is aware of that will be in the report is it's an NSLDS reporting, and that has to do with financial aid, which then kind of spurred our other discussion that I just talked about. But this one doesn't have anything to do with what the state auditor's office was doing. It's actually something that they have found with a lot of their colleges. And my understanding is it has to do with like I looked it up. It has to do with the National Student Loan Data System and timing of updating statuses on that. And then her other comment was there'll be maybe a few management letter comments, but she thinks there's just going to be one finding in the schedule of findings at this point in time. So I guess we felt really good with the discussion that we had the other day, other than not meeting the timeline that we had shared with the board. And like Amy said, some of that had to do with originally when we talked, they thought they just needed to get the audit done as fast as possible, which then they weren't going to do some of the items that really required a lot of time. One of those I think was, they call it the GASB 28, which involves a lot of our software, auditing our software agreements that we have. We got Williams and Company to do that. So that's one of the things they did. And I think they knocked that thing out fairly quickly, which took that off of Whipley's plate. And so we are looking at getting an unmodified opinion. If they would have skipped any of those steps, that it would have been a modified opinion, which, talking with the state, we both agreed we didn't want that. We want to have everything reviewed and have an unmodified opinion, a clean audit.
I mean, I'm encouraged that the college is providing additional resources and providing timely information. I guess if it wasn't, then this conversation may be a little different today. So I'm encouraged about what I've heard. So I would hope that the 23 gets completed as proposed, and that we can move on as quickly as possible in the audit world. And I've been through a lot of audits, so I know that they do take time. But we're already three audits behind, and we haven't even talked about the 26 audit, which won't be due till next spring sometime.
John, I agree with the thoughts that you just shared, but I also am willing to be a little more patient, knowing it's going to be comprehensive and not a modified opinion. So.
Amy, could you just cover the audit schedule that the board agreed to that was proposed by the college?
Yes. So FY23 was the June 30th, 2026, the one we've been discussing. FY24 by January 1st, 2027. FY25 by March 31st, 2027. FY26 anticipated completion date September 30th, 2027. Future audits of FY27 and beyond would be, that's when we would get caught up by the March 31st. So March 31st is the typical deadline.
And the college does not foresee any barriers to meeting the January 1st proposed and agreed upon deadline for fiscal year 24, correct?
Whiffley's was iffy on that when we discussed. She kind of started talking end of February. So, I mean, that's our only hangup is we can provide all the information as quickly as we possibly can, but we still are reliant on our audit company to do the audit. So, I think the first one is the hardest one. The second one gets easier, and she really thinks by the time we do the FY24, we will be really efficient as far as them understanding all of the things that go along with auditing for the state of Iowa, and kind of having the same language as far as what the names of reports are, what their expectation, and us being able to produce those in a quickly and timely manner. So I think we get more and more confident with the deadlines we have listed here as we move on.
I think one thing that is critical to ensure your auditor is aware of is that the college proposed that alternate schedule to catch up, informed by, based on your report, the auditor's feedback, the independent auditor's feedback. And that was a condition of the board's conditional approval. So if something appears off track, engaging in that conversation after it is off track is not appropriate.
Understood, and we will continue to have those conversations, and I appreciate Amy's assistance in being in those meetings as well, so she's hearing the same thing that we are, and yeah.
I was attempting to also with the auditors indicate the seriousness of the timeline and sticking with the timeline, because they did say they were hopeful, but then started to mention, but maybe, and trying to buy themselves a bit of time. So I do feel like I've tried to enforce that and try to enforce with the college that we will do everything we can, which is being the college, to get their side of the documentation done in place as quickly as possible so that the college is not holding up the timeline.
And our board president and I have had a number of conversations on like how aggressive we get with WIFLEs, because our fear is them backing out, and then we're in a really bad situation. So we're kind of on that tightrope of pushing as much as we can, but yet not losing them.
All right, well, stay tuned for further updates. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Can I just ask a question before
Sure.
And I'm just processing, I'm saying that I'm giving that as a preface here. I realize that we're behind on the FY23 audit. Should the board, recognizing we're behind here, but they're making significant progress, we see things are underway, does it make sense to consider something for February? I mean, is it reasonable to assume, if we're hearing that from President Stokes now? I'm just thinking about the director's comment of.
I think potentially, I think we have maybe a little time. We'll see how this 23 rolls through, if it rolls through on time, and get a better feeling as far as 24 audit. Then I think your comments are right on target as far as being able to have a continued discussion, but there's a lot of tangible or intangibles out there as far as this is concerned. And so I like your thought. I don't dismiss your thought. I think we just maybe could be a little bit premature on that right now as far as doing something specific.
Okay.
Thank you, Cass. Anything else? Okay, Amy.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Let's talk about accreditation and monitoring.
Let's do it.
Assessing risks.
Good morning, President Robbins and the State Board. My name is Tina Whalert, and I am the Pre-K-12 Division Administrator, and I'm here with Joanne Tubbs, who is our School Improvement Bureau Chief. And I am here because prior to Joanne starting, I was serving as the interim School Improvement Bureau Chief and worked with the team in setting up the process and the data that they used. And then I believe day one on the job, I passed it off to Joanne and said, here is your first big project. And she has taken it quite eloquently and played this out. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Joanne to cover this, and I'll be here if there's any questions about the process leading up to.
Good. Okay. All right. So within our School Improvement Bureau, We have a team of 6 consultants who primarily focus on what we call phase 1 monitoring. And what that includes are desk audits, where we audit every school district in the state with criteria on a rotating basis. And then new this year, we call it a risk assessment process, and that's what we're going to describe today. The purpose of this new risk assessment process is to identify districts that may be trending toward needing more comprehensive assistance, or districts who have maybe recently come out of that designation. And what we want to do is ensure that they don't either return to that designation or achieve that designation, and that they're moving in the right direction in terms of student success, and also that they're engaging with available state supports to assist with that process as well. Right. Okay. Identified schools receive a on-site monitoring visit and also virtual technical assistance. The assessment tools that we use in order to calibrate and figure out which districts would maybe qualify for this new pilot program is hold on.
The slides are not showing up. Could you?
Oh, they're not.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Hold this up too much.
Right. Yeah, otherwise I can.
If you.
Look at that, Tina, you're on the clock.
I'm feeling stressed.
He's not on the clock, actually.
Oh.
You just want to see them up here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're sharing your screen.
Yes, usually it's controlled from behind the curtain back there, but
It's my odds.
How's that? It's faster than me.
Here we are.
So can I interrupt before you go back? Because it goes back to my prior comment about confusion sometimes on terminology, which has to do with accredited non-publics. Because unless I'm wrong, accredited non-publics are also under this umbrella. And the terminology in a lot of these slides talk about public schools or districts, and sometimes mentions non-publics, schools.
Yep.
And just emphasizing again the need for consistency, because it, particularly in all the years that I worked with AEAs, and even to a degree the Department of Ed itself, there's often confusion about what is covered, what is under the umbrella, and what isn't under the umbrella. So a lot of these slides, and I know they're for us, but it just, even the opening slide talks about the state board with adopting rules for accrediting all public schools in Iowa. Well, state board's also charged with adopting rules for non-pubs as well. So just looking for the consistency factor.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
Perfect. Yep. So in terms of the scoring process to determine which schools would receive these new pilot visits, we created a scoring tool that has certain criteria that were identified as important in terms of our school's performance profiles and different student achievement factors and other indicators that are indicative of our attention, such as chronic absenteeism and student safety. So we have a bucket that is for student outcomes that talks about the performance profile, absenteeism, English language arts, mathematics, and science proficiency, and then also student safety.
So Joanne, with the student safety, and one of the concerns is that there hasn't been, so say maybe valid reporting.
Yeah.
We have a answer to that.
So sort of yes. And so what we did when we did the calculations is we actually analyzed concerns about high indicators of bullying and harassment and also potential underreporting of bullying and harassment. And so we used some statistical analysis to calculate what maybe high levels are and also underreporting based on state averages. And so underreporting was actually flagged as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and some of our other buckets include our monitoring process, which is the desk audit. And if a district had needed multiple corrective actions for consecutive years, and also if they had unresolved corrective actions. We also looked at general infrastructure, licensure, endorsements, properly endorsed teachers, staffing levels, and net negative open enrollment out. So those were some of the factors. Again, this is a pilot program. And so we looked at the districts that sort of rose to the top of those that weren't already identified as comprehensive, meeting those. Once we had those districts, we looked at a few other factors just so that we could have a comprehensive conversation with them, and including assessment monitoring findings. You know, during state assessments, we do monitor districts to make sure that they're in compliance. Any other additional desk audit conversations, their overall school performance profile rating, and then also student subgroups, and how those subgroups are performing. The actual day of the site visit, we created schedules collaboratively with district administration, and our primary focus on the day was actually around instruction. And so we had observation tools focused on best practices in instruction, the overall general learning environment, instructional materials, and types of student engagement throughout. We also met with school leaders, teachers, and other staff, such as paraeducators and even substitute teachers in some cases. And we interviewed those school employees regarding all of the risk factors that were weighed into the process. And we had them highlight their bright spots, their greatest achievements in their district, and what they thought their opportunities for growth were as well. Because we know that a one-day visit is definitely important, but it can be a snapshot. And so we wanted districts to have the opportunity to give us a full comprehensive picture around these areas. And so those interviews were extremely valuable. We then completed the process with a summary report with key observation findings, needed actions, and next steps.
So Joanne, what did you use for an observation tool for?
Yeah, so we used the same tool that our ESSA teams use for the comprehensive schools that we've been trained to use, that looks at instructional strategies, learning targets, and high quality instructional materials, and then has multiple breakdowns of each of those in terms of their implementation. So that was the primary tool that we used.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we tried through our reports to really highlight the things that were going really, really well in districts so that we can build on those, and then also opportunities for growth. And that this is just an example of one of the reports, just some highlights and also opportunities for growth for one district. We also gave them needed action steps, such as, coming into compliance with a directive corrective action that still needed to be corrected, strengthening instructional coherence with high quality instructional materials implementation, and increasing student engagement. We tried to focus on no more than 2 to 3 priorities so as not to overwhelm a district, and so that they could seamlessly integrate these into their action plans. We also provided a summary of next steps so that they knew what their charge was, and also ours as a support network, so that our consultants would know what our next communication would be with those districts and how we'll continue to support them throughout the next year in implementing their action plans and these goals. So we're in that phase now. So we're going to start new visits this fall, but for our visits that occurred in the spring, we are starting to engage with those districts on how we can implement these into their action plans, how they will report to us
their successes and how we can provide any additional support such as free professional development, on-site instructional modeling, or anything else that would be an assistance through this process.
Quick question. So one of the frustrations I've always had, not with the department or this process, but cooperation and buy-in by the school board and by leadership. Is there and I'll use the word requirement, that these reports, the follow-up has to be posted locally as well by the school boards? Or is it just simply, we give it to the superintendent or the principal or whoever, and they present it to the board? How does that process? I don't
Probably
know.
more the latter for now, as this is a pilot program. And so, but we do consider this part of our required monitoring of districts. And so there is a compliance piece that we can hold districts to with this process for sure. I will say that when I contacted districts in the spring, and it being a new process, there was, they had many questions. When you say the State Department of Ed is coming, that can lead to a little bit of anxiety. But the good news is through our ESSA teams and our other work and our other comprehensive professional development statewide, we have built a great deal of trust with school districts for our purpose and for our intentions, so that we're not looking to necessarily find things that are troublesome, but rather what we want to find out what you are doing and how we can best help. And so there may be opportunities that they are not engaging with yet, such as some of our free summer professional development, for example. And we can make those suggestions and try and make sure that they are fully engaged with those opportunities through this process. When our reports went out, we immediately got feedback from a few districts, and I highlighted a few quotes today I brought with me. Thanks for the great feedback. It's so wonderful to hear from this team. This is already an incredible start. We have so much more to accomplish. We couldn't do it without your support, and we look forward to your partnership. So that is exciting for us, as we know that we're really operating as a partner.
Great.
And I think just to provide some historical context, which I think both of you actually know very well, it is not necessarily a new process. It is a restored, differentiated, and improved process. When the department historically had shifted to differentiated accountability, discontinued on-site supports across that differentiated accountability system, and has, after launching its regionally based school improvement and special education improvement teams, meeting the requirements of ESEA and IDEA, have also now incorporated state requirements into that in-person coaching modeling support.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So this, to piggyback on that, this re-engages our team in those in-school supports, and we're very excited about that.
How many schools have been visited so far?
So far, we did 4 in the spring, and this fall we're scheduled to do 8 to 10 right now, and then we hope to do the same in the spring, 8 to 10.
Okay, and what is the follow-up as far as after you visit the school? And
So the follow-up, what we're engaging with the 4 schools that we've already visited with, our school improvement team consultants who are assigned to those regions are working with school leadership to look at their action plans to make sure that our recommendations have been implemented and then with something actionable that we can measure. And we'll be following up with either technical assistance, virtual visits, or additional in-person visits, which some districts have actually already requested. They would like us to come on site. And so we're excited about that opportunity as well.
And of course, if there's a compliance issue, we definitely are following up on that as well. So support and compliance.
Right. There's sort of that base level that we have to bring a few technical things into compliance. It might be a parking lot or, something like that. And then the higher level things where we're providing more instructional modeling and coaching. And I think just one big picture comment before we close out. You know that we aligned our ESEA and state accountability systems in 2024. We've presented to the board about how we are this coming year aligning our IDEA and state special education accountability system as well. So we'll have only 2 accountability systems as opposed to what was 4 different accountability systems. But we are also aligning our risk assessment and monitoring processes so that a school doesn't experience a designation or a district because at IDEA, it's designated at the district level, does not experience a designation and monitoring and continuous improvement supports that are disconnected across 2 divisions or are multiple site visits, for example, or multiple data review protocols or multiple improvement plans. And that is work that is implemented for the first time this school year. So then in our next meeting in September, you will have a sister presentation from special education about their risk assessment and on-site monitoring process.
That begs the question, how in the world do you scale this with that many districts and schools to cover? I mean, you can't do 4 a year and cover everybody in less than 100 years. So, I mean,
No, and I think that's why it's important to prioritize to have a solid risk assessment that everybody understands, because of course we can't make it to every school, but where actually are the priorities, and we're working with special education to identify if districts came up as both needing support through IDA and ESSA, then we're going to do those visits together. And that will be what is talked about. We don't want them to have one visit and then another visit and different teams coming in. So we're working very diligently to make sure that that schools experience us as a department and not as different bureaus or teams.
Maybe the last data connection is you know that in ESEA, our targeted support and improvement schools, meaning the schools that are identified based on achievement gaps experienced by a student group, over 90% of them are identified through achievement gaps experienced by students with disabilities. So it is incumbent upon us to coordinate these systems.
All righty, we'll look forward to a follow-up sometime.
Thank you.
Thank you. The item 12 on the agenda is National Association of State Boards of Education membership.
Yes, so I will have Paulo Di Maria, who is the president and CEO of the National Association of State Boards of Education, is going to join us. And he should be being promoted here, as well as President Robbins is going to help us with this conversation. So it's recommended that the state board hear and discuss the information. The state board seeks to evaluate the return on investment of $29,130 in membership dues that would be paid for by the general fund appropriated to the department. The National Association of State Boards of Education states its mission is to develop, support, and empower citizen leaders on state boards of education to strengthen public education systems so students of all backgrounds and circumstances are prepared to succeed in school, work, and life. So they also state that they include peer-to-peer interactions, expertise, publications, training, and technical assistance, a national voice, selected project support, and leadership opportunities. And you are also provided as one of your resources the benefits of membership of the National Association of State Boards of Education. I'm looking to see if we have our member on here. President Robbins, do you want to add anything to this before Paulo's able to join?
Excuse me, choked up talking about this. Actually, John Elkin brought this to my attention where he realized that he was paying $29,000 a year in membership services, and I go, no, but it seemed pretty healthy, and I thought, well, we have new board members, at least two that probably know nothing about this association or this organization that we belong to. I've had some experience with them off and on in my tenure, and our previous president of this board was the president of NASB for a period of time. But this seems like if we're going to, excuse me. There, I'm back. It just seems like if we're going to pay this amount of money, we need to know what we're getting and if it's going to be beneficial. So we do have the president from NASB with us, and I will just kind of turn it over to him. Anything you'd like to kick off the conversation with? Welcome.
Great. Thank you very much, President Robbins, members of the board. It's a wonderful pleasure for me to be with you all today. As you can imagine, given our mission to serve the boards of education across the country and the individuals who serve on those boards, it's always a pleasure to be able to join both in person and virtually to converse about the work of NASB, the work of boards, and the importance of the role that state boards of education play. As the introduction made clear, our mission, as was stated, is really to do exactly that. We're a membership organization. Many of you are familiar with membership organizations. If you're in the education community, perhaps you've been a member of a teacher organization or a superintendent's organization, a principal organization. If you're a business person, you've been a member of the Chamber of Commerce or an organization that is a professional organization affiliated with your particular business or profession or what have you. We are designed and deployed to strengthen, support, and empower the citizen leaders. And I love the composition of the Iowa board because you have people from all walks of life. A lot of people think, well, state boards of education, they're only education people, but they're not. And in fact, the diversity of voices around the table is always a very important component of the effective operation of a state board of education. And your commitment by virtue of being on the state board is really to strengthen public education and the public education system of Iowa so that students of all backgrounds are prepared to succeed in school, work, and life. I wanted to, sort of give you a quick overview of the kinds of things that we as a membership organization, membership association provide. It's sort of many of the same things that you experience in other associations that you've been a member of. One of the things I wanted to highlight with you, President Robbins, you made the point that you've got some new members on the board. We just concluded one of our, capstone events is our new member institute. We just held that early in July. We do it in coincidence with the Education Commission of the States National Policy Forum. We had 24 new state board members from across the country coming together to not only get to know each other and things that are going on in various states across the country, but also to build their understanding of their roles and the work that they do. We cover everything from parliamentary procedure to emerging policy issues and so forth and so on. We cover the charge for two people from every board to come to that, including travel expenses as well as hotel expenses, and many people who are engaged with NASB deeply point to that experience as a defining moment for them. That's just one of the examples of the different kinds of member engagement opportunities that we offer, because when we survey our members, they say what we really want to do is interact with others who serve in the same role that we do. So we've designed a number of opportunities to help accomplish that. I mentioned New Member Institute. The other thing that is an in-person event is our annual conference. Our annual conference is scheduled for Baltimore, Maryland in October. It's the 27th and 28th. And we also have a pre-conference day on the 26th. We just finished reviewing all the different conference session proposals. We have a conference planning committee made up of state board members who review that for relevancy and significance. We had many proposals submitted by state board members highlighting the great things that are happening in their states. Often we'll put those together so that you can hear a session on accountability and improvement that features Tennessee and Illinois, as well as those doing the best research in the country on those kinds of topics. We'll have a pre-conference on artificial intelligence that'll include issues like screen time and cell phones and the use of education technology. We'll also have a pre-conference of improving mathematics outcomes for students, and I know Iowa has been a leader in that area. In fact, I recently made a presentation at ECS, a session on state comprehensive math improvement plans, and included among my slides comments about the Iowa plan and the great work you all are doing in that regard. We also have many virtual experiences. I think one of the things our members find to be a favorite is our NASB member exchange. This is a virtual interaction that happens every month. We bring people together. It's usually the first Monday of the month, although in September it'll be September 14th. People come together. We get a little bit of a federal update from our federal advocacy contractor, and then we break out into regional groups to talk about emerging issues. Not only what people are thinking about, concerned about, or coming across their desk, but also highlighting the amazing things that are happening across the country. People will talk about accomplishments, new things that they're doing, new things that they're exploring, and this always stimulates great conversation. And then after the exchange, we always follow up with additional resources to our members. We also have this same format delivered around certain topics. We have an ongoing project on high school transformation, and that project will start a series of topic-specific exchanges on August 20th. So that's another opportunity, and we provide that on a number of different project areas where people can better educate themselves on certain key areas and use that information to help inform the work that's going on in their particular states. We also have, and many of you are familiar with the various publications we put out. Our flagship publication is the State Education Standard. We just put an edition out back in May on reimagining the roles of teachers and leaders. This is, a lot of the staffing issues that boards are facing, teacher shortages in certain content areas, and even the latest thinking around strategic staffing models, where you're actually, moving away from the one teacher, one classroom kind of approach and looking at more team-based approaches, deploying people in different ways to improve the overall, not only the educational experience for students, but the outcomes for students as well. We did a whole issue on that topic, and the forthcoming issue will be about accountability and school improvement. Because again, we survey our members and we hear, just like you all have had a conversation earlier today about, how do you continue? A lot of people are frustrated with the promise of standards-based reform was if we put standards in place and assessments and accountability systems, that will ultimately lead us to a place where things are getting better. And we scratch our heads sometimes about, is improvement really happening? And a lot of people are interested in understanding what are those things that aren't taking place sufficiently enough in order to drive that kind of improvement activity. So that'll be a feature of our upcoming standard. We also issue a number of other publications. One is called State Innovations, that highlights states doing really innovative work in certain areas. We have a publication called Policy Updates, which is just meant to update people on emerging policy issues. One of my favorites is called The Power of the Question. It's a publication that is formulated around key questions that state board members should ask in the context of different issues that they may be working on. We also have a set of publications called the Boardsmanship Review, which is really a guide for, we use it mostly for new members. It's a guide to different aspects of your service as a board member. Managing with the media, getting along with the legislature, coordinating things with the governor's office, things like parliamentary procedure, open records laws, open meeting laws, and so forth and so on. So we've talked about events, we've talked about publication. Let me talk a little bit about member services. We do a number of things for our members that constitute services. So for instance, we do retreat facilitation. I was just in Hartford, Connecticut with the Connecticut State Board facilitating their retreat. I was just in a planning meeting with Stephen Asoya in Illinois. for a retreat that they're doing. We'll be also doing retreats in New Hampshire and then later in Kansas. We often let people know that we're happy to be, sometimes people feel like having a neutral voice, but a voice that is familiar with the work of state boards as a retreat facilitator is a helpful thing. We do support boards in their board effectiveness work, primarily around self-assessments. We're in the process of doing a self-assessment for Illinois as part of their retreat. We're also supporting a self-assessment process in Hawaii, as well as one in Tennessee. We are very keen on strategic plans. Illinois has a great plan. I love how your agenda starts with the vision, mission, and goals of the organization to anchor the work of the board. We are currently involved heavily with Montana in terms of helping them develop their strategic plan, and we did some consulting work with Tennessee in the recent refresh of their strategic plan. We'll often do boardsmanship training. A year and a half ago, Nebraska had 4 new members on an 8-member board. They asked us to come in and just do some team building. We brought in one of our state board members from Indiana, and I went down to Nebraska and did some work to just, create stronger relationships, help people anchor themselves in the work of state boards. We're also currently helping Missouri with they're doing a new search for their state chief. And while we're not conducting the search, we're assisting them in the process, managing the search process for them. And for Hawaii, we're helping them do, design an evaluation tool for their chief. We also, answer any number of policy research questions and information around guidance, information requests that come into us all the time. As I mentioned before, we're organized by region, and so each region has a particular staff member who's a contact, and those people are sort of the channels by which information requests come to us and through us. The other thing, I'm always pointing out is we're a really small organization, and so we leverage partnerships. We can hold our own in a conversation around assessment, but if you really want to dive deep, we're going to point you to the Center for Assessment and coordinate with our partners there to get you the information and the answers that you need. The same is true about any number of other different aspects of the education, issue playbook. Let me conclude by mentioning a couple of the project areas that we currently have underway. We've had a long-standing early childhood education state network where many states have been partners in that work and reviewing their own work in early childhood education and focusing on different aspects. In the past, it's been about funding, it's been about access, it's been about quality. Lately, the focus has been on the workforce in early childhood education and continuing to explore issues of access and quality. We have a principal collaborative that started with board members who were either current or former school principals, and they also were board members. And so we were doing some work on the importance of leadership. A lot of times we see boards discussing deeply teacher shortage, teacher retention, and we try to remind them that principal shortage and principal retention are also key issues. And in many respects, the principal can play a tremendous role in ensuring the improvement of a particular school and the creation of a culture of excellence in a school. And so those individuals who brought both principal experience and state board experience together really formed a powerful way to kind of explore the latest research and disseminate information. We've done a number of publications, a number of webinars around that particular topic, and in fact have had others join us who may not have a principal background, but are who just simply interested in that role of leadership. We have a high school transformation state network that started with a publication that we put out a couple of years ago about what model high schools are looking like. And it's really been transformative. We've had a number of states as part of that network, and we're just launching our phase 2 of that work with states like Kentucky, Washington, California, and a number of others. We also, as I mentioned, we'll have a pre-conference on AI and ed technology. We have an ed technology advisory group, started out with state board members who had an IT background. and then expanded to people who just had an interest in AI. They too conduct a number of webinars. They'll have an in-person meeting in Baltimore on October 26th to dive deeper into the key issues, to share information that the different states bring to the table, and to continue sort of wrestling with this changing world that we see happening around us relative to AI, the use of technology, issues of computer literacy for students, and then the issues of screen time and that are bubbling up and surfacing across the country. And finally, we have a math improvement learning and action group. This stemmed from a publication of ours, as well as watching a number of states, including Iowa, but also Maryland, California, Louisiana, and others doing things really diligently in terms of improving math outcomes, in addition to the work they were doing in the science of reading. And we said, and we had a lot of members interested in wanting to pursue that and better understand what those aspects are. So we convened this learning and action group around math improvement. It will also have a pre-conference when we're in Baltimore. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any further questions that you or the members of the board have in the interest of continuing to be a provider of services and a place where Iowa can benefit as well as share the great work that you all are doing.
Thank you. We have, this is not a decision-making time today, but we will address it again at the September meeting. Do you have any questions right now for Paulo with what he's covered a broad range of ideas and things that they've been working on, services they've been providing? Any questions for him? Okay. Then your assignment for our next meeting sometime is to get on the NASB website and explore what's there. If you have questions or ideas or suggestions, I'm sure that Paula would be happy to respond to those. And we'll come back in our meeting in September and follow up with this conversation.
One thing to add, in September, I'm a student member on the board, so I'm attending their student member webinar, which they offer. So I appreciate that opportunity.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. And I probably should have mentioned that in my remarks. We're very active in coordinating the student member board members across the country. In fact, I listened a little bit to your meeting last month where you had a conversation about the student membership, and you referred to one of our publications. And in fact, we just put out a new publication that updates the older publication about the status of student members across the country and some, sort of tips and suggestions for state boards in terms of student membership. We also have had a number of proposals at our conference that involve student board members and are, continue to be a place where we bring those individuals together. They share, they have been quite engaged in our high school transformation work, as you can imagine, because many of them are high school students. And it's always, to me, a refreshing perspective to make sure that we factor into our policy and our practice work to get that student voice. Mr. President, if I might, I also, would invite anybody who wants to just check in and have a conversation with me directly. Whenever we find out that there are new members appointed to boards, I send a welcoming email, and I always include an opportunity for people to schedule a time just to, get to know NASB better, talk with me about the kinds of things we're seeing across the country, the kinds of services that we're able to provide. I'd be happy to do that and make my, I have a Calendly link people can look at to schedule a time, or if they want to send me an email with available times they have, I'm happy to provide that that kind of one-on-one engagement. Like I said, we're a very small organization, and we really pride ourselves in the kind of individualized attention and support that we can give to individual members as well as to boards.
John,
Thank you.
Can I ask just one really quick question?
Sure.
So within our membership dues, and Paulo, you mentioned some of the support that you provide to the projects that you have going on. That technical support, is there an amount of that comes within our membership dues?
Well, all the different services that I described are offered free of charge, unless they get, if we were to undertake like a, the full process of a strategic plan design, for instance. We would have to eventually charge for something like that, but even that charge would be discounted by 20%. So like the work we're doing for Montana with their strategic plan, no charge. We've traveled there, we've appeared at various board meetings, we've done a lot of, different parts of the process. They have a really strong executive staff member there who is, I would argue, driving the process, but we've been consulting with her on the work. In fact, we talk every other week. So I would suggest yes, that while it's not like, oh, of that amount, X amount of dollars is for this, but when services are rendered, that list of services that I listed is largely provided without charge, unless it gets to a point where we're actually undertaking a major, aspect of a particular project. Does that help you a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right, thanks, Paula.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members of the board. Keep up the great work you all are doing.
Thank you. All right, one last agenda item, which is the September agenda.
Yeah, so I'd like to give a brief update on the September board meeting, which is scheduled right now as a retreat. Historically, when we do a retreat, that's held offsite, and we have the meeting and then also a visit to a school or post-secondary institution. The September retreat is currently scheduled for September 16th and 17th, but based on the content that we have, currently we believe that we'll be able to accomplish that on September 17th. So just a one-day meeting. We have traditionally also kept a list of places that the state board would like to visit, things they would like to see. And so one of the things that we are exploring right now is we're currently working with a university to arrange a visit that would look at their teacher preparation program. Dr. Pennington and I are working on that. And so we are in the beginning stages of planning that, but I wanted to bring that to you and see if you had any additional feedback on that, or anything, President Robbins, that you wanted to add about the September meeting.
Well, we're looking at it, it's a fairly light agenda. So I guess in my view, we could have the meeting in the morning and then the visits in the afternoon would work the best in my world. I'm not sure who you're working with or what their limitations are, but make it a one-day rather than a two-day event.
Yeah, so I think we can definitely make that happen. We do have a few barriers that we're navigating as far as whether we might have to do that backwards, but we can sure get back to you once we're able to get some more details in place.
And the intent is to profile a teacher preparation program that has significantly improved their foundations of reading pass rate in the past 1 year.
All right.
So that's all I had to share about the meeting at this point.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the cause? If not, we're adjourned.